Are you fed up with people being wrong about crochet? I get a crazy range of responses when I tell people that I crochet. Some are kind or funny, some are slightly rude, but a lot of them are just plain wrong. So me and some of you lovely viewers have put together a huge list of things that people get wrong about crochet so we can bust some myths. There's one right way to hold your hook, or maybe two. Traditionally, crocheters hold their hook in a pencil or a knife grip. However, there is no hard and fast rule that says that you have to do one of those specific things. Personally, I have always held my pencil or pen slightly unusually, and I'm exactly the same with a crochet hook. It hasn't hampered my ability to crochet at all. It works for me, and however you hold your hook that works best for you is just fine. As long as it's not causing you any pain or strain, crack on, hold it how you want to hold it. There's only one correct way to make good tension. Again, I am amazed by the array of different ways people hold their yarn in their offhand to create tension. I have a very specific way of doing it that is a fairly common way, but it doesn't mean it's the only correct way. Some people find things like tension rings help. How you hold your yarn in your offhand whilst you're crocheting, as long as you're getting the tension you want, who cares how you're holding it? You have to follow crochet patterns exactly as they are written. No, you don't. If you're a person who has some confidence in crochet or just wants to experiment, there is absolutely nothing wrong with purchasing or finding a free pattern and taking it in your own direction. The only time in which this is not cool is when you take someone else's pattern, adjust it a bit, and then claim that it's your pattern. It's not, it's their pattern and you've adjusted it. Crocheters in general, you've got a pattern, that's brilliant. You want to take it in your own direction, that's even better. I actually love it when people take my patterns, make a twist on them, and then send me a photo of the finished product. I have seen some really cool ideas that way. Mistakes are hard to fix. Some mistakes are hard to fix, but most of them are really easy to fix, especially if you're not in a time crunch. Frogging is a term for undoing your crochet work for a reason. We all do it quite a lot. Most crochet mistakes can be fixed by frogging a few rows, going back when you realise, but even when you've finished something and you look at it as a complete thing and there is a fault somewhere, it is still possible to internally unpick stitches or patch over things. There are loads of ways to fix your mistakes. Crochet is impossible to repair. Fixing crochet, for the most part, is actually surprisingly easy as long as you've got either matching yarn that you can then attach and rework the project, or if you don't mind having an obvious but funky fix. So sometimes we can put a patch over things or make a deliberate fix that looks like a fix but still looks really nice and fits in with the project. After all, this is handmade. Everyone hates weaving in loose ends. I don't. Sometimes I find it a little bit frustrating, and I know a lot of people get to the end of the project and they're like, loose ends, why? And yeah, you know, it can be a bit frustrating, but absolutely not everybody hates weaving in loose ends. In fact, some people find it really quite relaxing. And just FYI, if you're a loose end not a fan person, that's a sentence. If you're not a fan of loose ends, there are ways that you can work most of them in as you go as well. No-sew crochet projects are cheating. Now, I'm not a big no-sew crochet project person. Most of the things I design inherently require a bit of hand sewing, even if it's for limbs or details. But there is no reason to look down on no-sew crochet projects. It's just a different way of doing it, and it's one that works for some people and not so much for others. And that's fine. It's not worse. Crochet is too difficult for children to learn. Now, obviously, this depends a bit on the children. I have two kids. The 12-year-old is crocheting really competently now, super proud of the things that she's making and working out and freehanding by herself. My 5-year-old's got a long way to go. His attention span is considerably shorter, but he's still already showing an interest in picking it up because they see me doing it all the time. Absolutely, get them started on the right foot. It is not too difficult for children. Crochet is much harder than knitting. I am not a knitter. I have attempted to learn to knit and I'm still very much at the failing to learn to knit zone. I dip in and out of it. I've got a couple of knitting friends who've helped me on several occasions and I suck. Crochet, categorically not harder than knitting, at least for me. And on the same vein, I often get told, well, if you can crochet, you can knit. No. It's just not the same. It's a completely different tool, worked in a different way. The hand-eye coordination required for each of them, one predominantly working with a tool in one hand and the other working with tools in both. It's just not the same thing. One is not necessarily better than the other one. They're just not comparable. It's apples and stairs. Crochet projects take forever to finish. Yeah, some crochet projects I'm still not finished. I've been working on them for months. I in fact talked about this the other day, but other crochet projects can be super quick to do. You can work up a little crochet project like a tiny keychain animal in a matter of half an hour to an hour. All crochet projects are not very long term. It just depends on the project and to an extent what size hook and yarn you're using. Crochet is outdated. I've heard several people imply and directly say, what's the point in crochet? It's not useful or practical anymore. Well, a lot of things aren't necessarily useful or practical. Actually, crochet has a huge amount of current practical applications, from clothing to interior design to beautiful things and toys. So it is in no way no longer useful in the modern world. In fact, I would argue that hobbies that involve crafting and being away from the internet, sorry, we're all on it right now, are great for modern life. Crochet is neither stylish nor fashionable. I'm not a fashion person, I don't know if you've noticed. However, that doesn't mean that crochet can't be completely on trend. In fact, recently we've seen a lot of famous people, from Taylor Swift to Jack Black, wearing crochet. I mean, you know, style and fashion levels slightly different there, right? But this is clearly an area where crochet has a place still. And also, who cares if you're stylish and fashionable? Like, why even say that? Crochet fabric is always stiff. No, it's just not. Here are some examples. Bendy. You can't wash crochet items. Well, you can, but it's one of the great things, and it hugely varies depending on the yarn that you've used in the project that you're making. I mean, some things are literally huge and therefore hard to wash. Others are very delicate and therefore you have to wash them carefully. But as a blanket term, absolutely, crochet can be washed. Just be aware that there are different washing instructions based on what you've made. You can't crochet intricate designs with basic stitches. No, you totally can. That's one of my favorite things about crochet toys, in fact, is that you can use such a basic set of stitches, just single crochet increase and decreases, and make the most phenomenal number of shapes and designs with just a little bit of extra hand sewing on the top. You can make some really amazingly intricate stuff with just a very few stitches. Crochet is only good for winter projects. Do you only like stuffed animals in winter? No. I mean, crochet is great for winter projects. It uses yarn, and yarn is quite warm, but it is also fantastic for a range of summer projects and projects that are brilliant all year round, like things like the plushies. Crochet is a practical craft and not an art. I've had some, I wouldn't call them arguments, but discussions about this in the past. In fact, I think I made a video rant on it. I'll link it here if I'm remembering correctly. I think I am. I definitely recorded that even if I didn't upload it. But I fully and wholeheartedly see crochet as an art. Of course it is a craft. Art is not exclusive to the medium of painting. Art is all around us in a huge number of forms, and yarn is one of them. You need a lot of expensive tools to start crocheting. All you need to start crocheting is a pair of scissors from somewhere in your house or a sharp knife, a hook, and some yarn. Sure, hooks can be really expensive, but they can also be dead cheap, and you can find them at places like thrift stores and car boot sales, depending on where you are. There are a lot of ways to start crochet really, really cheaply, and you don't need a lot of kit to do it. Crochet hooks that are labelled one size will all be the same size. Now, this is more a myth among crocheters than about crochet, but I see a lot of people assuming that you can swap a 4mm hook for a 4mm hook that is from a different brand, and it's just not a good idea. Even though they are technically on paper both 4mm, they actually almost always produce very slightly different size stitches. Try and stick with one hook for the same project, because there is a variation in, I believe, where they're measuring that 4mm point. Yarn weight or thickness is standardized. I mean, it should be. I mean, Really should be. I'd really love it if it was. And it often is within brands, but between the different brands, no, you can have DK yarns of wildly different thicknesses. And a lot of that's down to the composition, so what particular fiber they're made of. But there is also variation, even sort of acrylic from brand to brand. You need to buy expensive yarn to make good projects. This drives me completely wild. Some people really love specific yarn fibers, like cottons and silks and merino wools, and that I totally get, but that doesn't mean that someone who chooses to use acrylic for a project is going to have an end product that is any less valid or lovely than the person who chose a different yarn fibre. I work in acrylics quite a lot. I have a lot of strong opinions on working with acrylics and choosing them, but I absolutely do not think you have to spend a load of money to get a good yarn. You have to use cotton yarn to make crochet toys. A lot of people favour cotton and cotton blends for making amigurumi. Personally, I do love a cotton blend for them, but as I've just said, I also really like working with acrylics and some wools as well in order to make my crochet toys. It actually just depends on what I want out of that project and finished product, what particular type of yarn I'm going to choose. Crochet is a solitary hobby. Yeah, it can be. However, there is quite a spectacular and huge community of people who crochet, who want to get together and make a big effort to do so. Local crochet clubs are a really big thing and they're incredibly popular, but so are community online spaces where people crochet. When you're really into a hobby, you want to talk about it. And a lot of people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis don't want to spend their whole time talking about crochet. Let's face it, it's why I'm talking to you about crochet, is so that we can share this thing together. So just because something is solitary doesn't mean that it has to be solitary. I've got to put this in here. We all hear it, we all hate it. I don't know who's still spouting it, but people are. Crochet is for old women. Yeah, old women like crochet. So do middle-aged women, young women, female children, and men of all ages also like crochet. It is not an exclusive hobby. Anyone who wants to crochet, if you have the dexterity and a few quid to buy some starting supplies, you can crochet too. This is not an old lady's game. This is an anybody's game. Hi and welcome. Literally anybody who wants to get involved. You need a lot of free time to be a real crocheter. I have a time deficit. That is the only way I can describe it. Like so many people, I have a full-time job. I do this on top of it. I also do quite a lot of sports and activities and exercises. I have 2 small children. Free time is something that I feel like I have none of, and yet I still manage to crochet. I fit it into slots of time when I'm in the car and someone else is driving. I do it when I'm hanging out with my children and between goes when I'm playing board games or cards with them. You can slot this crochet hobby into periods of time that are otherwise occupied. Therefore, you do not need to be someone with a huge stack of free time. And what is this concept of a real crocheter anyway? If you've got a hook and you move yarn around with it, welcome, you're a crocheter. You need a dedicated craft room to enjoy crocheting. Now, I think you can probably see from where I'm sitting that this room is not solely dedicated to crochet. I would say that it is 75% reptiles and 25% crochet. I am in a lucky position to have a home office. I work from home most of the time. That is where I work, where I crochet, and where all my tiny friends are kept. It is also completely possible, as I used to do for years and years, to craft without any extra space at all. I had crafting boxes, I had things that slid under the sofa. You make use of the space you have. Do not let your lack of a crafting room make you feel like you can't craft. You can fit it somewhere, you can squeeze it in. And likewise, you don't need a lot of money to crochet. I have had eye-rolly comments in the past from people saying, oh, well, you know, wasting all your money, blah, blah, blah. And you totally can. Like, don't get me wrong, some nice yarn is really pricey and you could just wildly waste all your money if you weren't careful. But you don't have to be terrible with your budgeting spreadsheets to be a crocheter. In fact, you can budget really, really well to have a fantastic experience with crochet without ever breaking the bank. You don't need a lot of money to get involved with this. Anyway, I think that's about 30 things that I reeled off. I would love to know whether you agree with them, whether you have got myths of your own that you think need busting into the ground, and what the most annoying thing that you hear about your hobby is. Share it with us in the comments section below. We'll have a good rant, it'll be great. I'll see you there. Happy crocheting.